Hey, what do I want? If I have a K series and I want the best stuff, when do I move away from the rocker arm? When do I move away from the stock rocker arm? When do I what's to be gained when as you venture towards again, like if I don't care to know all this stuff and I'm coming to you because you know the stuff that I need to know, what do I want?
Well, it depends on what your application is, right?
I have a K. I understand that the chain is some level of limitation, and the there's a hydraulic tensioner on the chain, unlike a timing belt, and I want to keep that system in place. So, what do I where are the limitations in that? How much power can I make? How much RPM can I safely operate the engine under? Something to that effect.
Do you want me to answer that, Dave?
Yeah, sure. It's like there's a lot of ways you can go with this. Sort of like how extreme do you want to get, really?
Sure.
I
So
don't want to
let's.
work on it. I don't want to work on it, but I wanna turn it 10,000 because I like how it looks on the dash and it sounds cool. And I don't want to. Can I have that or no?
All right.
Uh, sure.
Let's just pick a random something that people can relate to. The average 950 index racer. So naturally aspirated. You said you want to turn 10,000 RPM. I would have to say that the factory rocker arm is going to be a big limiting factor there for two reasons. The factory rollers aren't too reliable in excess of 9,500 RPM, and they're very heavy. So a quick cheat for horsepower is lightening up the valve train, right? So the first thing you would do is ditch the factory rocker assembly. Uh, I would purchase a set of Skunk Ultra single lobe rocker arms, best in the industry. And at that particular point, move in the direction of either machining one of the Ultra Series cams to a single lobe, depending on the application, or assuming that you have supporting mods to run something like a BMF1, you switch to a BMF1. I would say the BMF1 in testing, very safe to 10,000 RPM. Um, I would say moving from a factory rocker arm to that skunk single lobe to something like a BMF is good for close to 50 horsepower on methanol versus most of the three low cams that are available on the market. Would you?
Aspirated a 50 horsepower gain.
Yeah. Would you say that's about right, Dave?
I don't know. I haven't fucked with those cans in so long. It's like
That's a big
you should have
gain.
asked me in 2014.
Yeah, I would say moving from a three lobe tuner three on a stock rocker arm to a BMF one single lobe single rocker is good for about 40 to 50 wheel horsepower on methanol.
Wow.
10K with the factory rocker arms, those things are pretty heavy. I did the math, and basically 50 grams equals 65 pounds at the rev limit. So just 50 grams of more reciprocating mass in the valve train, you're going to have to make sure you have at least 65 pounds more spring just to control the additional mass.
Right. So these are some of these recipes that like if there were a flashcard available and you said, "Hey, Mr. Customer, if you want 8,000, 9,000, 10,000, here are your prescriptions and here are the part numbers you need to get because the weight in the valve train is a big thing that I think a lot of people overlook. And you're plugging these numbers in that says, hey, if you have effectively 65 pounds more of rocker arm in action, then you need this much more spring to control it. Like there's a fair share of guys that'll talk about valve area versus boost and how the boost negatively affects the valve spring's ability to control the intake valve. Like there's a lot of that math that I think a lot of people would benefit from just seeing it and being able to apply it to their recipes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think most people run like this is an aside, but I think most people probably run too much valve spring.
That is true.
I I agree. I mean, My buddy has a low pressure push rod engine that has lived extremely well, with 160 pounds on the seat. And, back in the day, you'd have 350, 400 on the seat to try to achieve a similar result
Yeah.
because the whole system has gotten better. So one of the things that your company offers as a benefit is someone can just buy a sorted system. You've got you doing the design, you've got Jamie doing the sorting and the proofing, and the customer just has to send a purchase order or pick up a phone and they can have that stuff. That's that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I wish I took more of a systems approach 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or whatever, because that seems like that's the guiding mentality. You almost really have to like just make recipes. And so, yeah, Jamie's going to be working on the recipe show.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I'm working on how to make pastrami show.
In the PDF that Brandon sent, it talked about that K tensioner. Do you have time to get into that or no?
I actually grade that one out because in the Honda world, that is like a huge source of misinformation that's existed in the hive mind for like 10 years at this point, over 10 years at this point.
Okay.
We could probably touch that towards the end of J2.
Yeah, I mean, they talked about this chain slap thing. I mean, that's all bitch. So it's like if you increase the acceleration, the positive or negative accelerations on any cam, it's going to be harder to turn it over in the engine,
Yeah.
right? And therefore, you need more tensioner force in order to hold the rear cam back because it wants to snap forward, right? And that's just a matter of like they're doing this. Yeah, I'll get into tensioner stuff next time, but I'm saying like they have this idea of chain slap, but then they do it on an engine with no pressure in the tensioner, so they're relying on whatever the 7 pound spring inside the tensioner when the motor's totally dry, and they're trying to turn big massive cams, and then they're like surprised when the chain kinks in the middle. It's like, come on.
Yeah, no, that's there's there's not nothing going on. Like when you look at the Coyotes with the Motec and you have the ability to look at all four cams at the same time, there's more than nothing going on for sure.
Right. No, and you definitely need the tensioner has to be able to control the tensioner when the exhaust cam or whatever the rear cam wants to snap forward. Right. But other than that, I mean, you're going to see some movement if you're not fully controlling it. But you definitely don't do it on a dry engine with big cams.
Oh no, 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 no. That's a waste of time.
You know,
That's
well, you understand that as a waste of time, but we have opinion leaders in the Honda world that think that somehow that whole thing is valid, and that's like it's been a source of attack for 10 years.
it's a it's a worst case scenario that can't really present itself. People don't understand that.
They don't understand cams, they don't understand engines, they don't understand tensioners. You understand these things, so it's like, yeah, of course not. But these people don't understand anything, and they're like, well, this is how it is. The Phantom of the Operas and off the piano making this go crazy.
Do they get to sell somebody something to avoid this mystery problem?
Yeah, they got to be a hero on the internet.
It's a good thing the internet's not a real place.
It's the one and only Digo Double G.
I always try to find a way to put stuff into some words I can use. The jerk. If I if I wasn't an old man and I was standing in front of a bar with a couple of plates on it, and I was going to clean and jerk it, I know how much I have to lift it. I know how much velocity I can control to not let the weight swing over me as I bring it over my head. But the jerk is when I initialize to move that weight. That's my jerk. Like when I go to pull on that weight, that's this. Is that akin to when the valve train meets the valve lift?
In weightlifting, that jerk movement would basically be sudden acceleration.
The weight is on the ground and I'm going to pick it up and I go to yoke it.
Right.
That's the jerk.
That's the jerk. Well, in cam world, it's like yanking at it. So it wouldn't be like a slow deadlift.
No, no, I'm talking about the initializing, like when
Oh,
you
oh,
first.
the jerk comes up to the chest, right?
No, no, I'm just talking about when you first put your hands on the weight and you go to lift that weight
Yeah,
and you pull the slack out of your joints
yeah,
and you have to start moving that mass.
yeah.
That's what we're talking about in jerk or no?
No, jerk is like how suddenly you're pulling up on it.
Yeah. Okay, we're saying the same thing. We're just not meeting in the words.
It's
Okay.
not the preloading part of it. After I got it preloaded, then it's like snapping it up. Like I don't want to use snap because that's the next derivative, but you're just jerking on the bar to get it moving with as high of
Okay.
acceleration change as possible.
Okay. Do you have to go or you got another minute?
I got another minute.
Can we talk about that Jay Z cam?
You don't want to?
I
We
mean,
can't.
we could do it off the thing. I'm just selfish. I want to know I want to know what you think. That way I can come back to it when it's a finished product and review this conversation versus the reality I'm experiencing.
Do I want to do it now? I kind of want to do it with Jamie here, but how about I leave you with this analysis? You saw that, right?
Yeah, that's a hot mess.
Okay, so that was a PVD steel cam that's starting to gall. It's well on its way of being complete trash, right? You could see the edges are all frayed.
Yeah. I've seen that in real life.
You know, like these edges are all frayed.
Yeah,
And
it
then
actually rolls over the edge. I mean, there's a fair share of material just hanging off the side of the lobe.
right, and then you look at all this pitting, this spalling. This is like, when concrete spalls, just little pieces fall out of it.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the chill cast, I don't know. Which one do you want to run?
Give the starting line advantage right there, too.
So in the world of billet, if I have an engine, a low production volume engine that I'm going to run for a short period of time to proof the idea.
Go steel, go PVD, go WPC, do whatever, coatings and treatments allow you to get through the initial testing. But if you did long-term durability, hey, I want to go 10,000 miles, you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a race engine, like you're dealing with more heat, you're dealing with more RPM, you're dealing with more spring pressures.
Right.
A stock cam could probably last a bit, perform because everything is just so mild, low accelerations, low lifts, But once you started getting more aggressive, once that lift goes up, the acceleration typically goes up too.
Yeah. Okay. Um, can you leave me with some homework on this Jay Z? What do I need to find for a spring?
Find me whatever you think it'll lift maximum.
Okay.
I don't know why people are so afraid of lift.
I, I'm only afraid of running out of room for lift.
Right.
So I
If you
have.
have the room,
There's a lot of conical springs on the market that bind is less of it's going into bind by it's going into stack up by design.
right.
So I'm going to hunt through some springs to try to find how close do you want to run it to bind?
A good spring, you can run it 30, 40 thousands from buying.
Well, 30 and 40 thousandths is 10 thousandths difference, and if we want max lift, like we got to pick a number.
Oh, okay.
How tight do you want to run the game?
Then factor 40 thousandths.
Okay.
And then if I want to cheat an extra 10, I know I have it.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna work on that. I have about every flavor here.
The other thing is like, look, you can go into like Peterson Spring. Have you ever looked at PAX catalog?
Yeah.
They have all sorts of stuff in there, right? So we just need a spring that fits in the bucket. And then, do you guys have problems with too much pressure over the nose?
In the past couple of years, there's been some cams that are 250 plus over the nose.
Yeah.
For a long time, it seemed like if you had 50 or 60 pounds of boost and 220 over the nose, you had a system that worked and didn't kill parts. And then the past couple of years, some high pressure conicals have come into the space that are like 250, 255, 260 over the nose.
Are they killing the chill cast or just the billets?
Um, I haven't run them on a chilled cast. I haven't gone to that level of spring because even the cars at Bonneville, where the engine's parked at 8,500 RPM steady state, what the dual spring combinations that have worked in the past were working for me, so I wasn't looking for them.
Yeah.
But now that there's a possibility to have a better set of camshafts in the market, I'm trying to think through how I can get into a spring retainer combination that gives me some room.
The other thing is if you can find something with well, we could also play with the base circle. Like I know that like from my measurements, the 2JZ base circle is about 36 millimeter or eight, yeah, 18 millimeter base circle. So it's got a 36 diameter base circle.
Did you see that Tomei has some small base circle cams for the JZ?
I haven't. Is it
No, nobody really uses them, but they are out there.
is it
And
higher lift?
I only know one guy, and the valves fell out of his engine, so I don't know a lot of. I've not looked at it twice,
Yeah.
because normally the Japanese stuff is a bit soft compared to what the American market wants. Um, but I do know that there are a fair share of guys with RB26s that are turning those things pretty hard, and they have a smaller base circle cam than a JZ. So I don't know that. Another question that I would present is how much does the base circle influence the cam design? Because in the domestic world, everybody went to these 55 and 60 millimeter cores or more to try to slow the lifter down.
Yeah, I would say the primary thing with the base circle right now is to see, looking at the valve springs, how much you could actually, how much lift can you get with the combination of valve spring and adjusting the base circle.
Okay.
Unless you wanted to make a stock drop in cam, was like, you can use OE lifters and just drop.
Now, listen, there's 10 flavors of close to stock stuff on the market. If you're going to go down the wormhole, it has to be better than everything else.
Yeah. And then like 250 over the nose, I don't see how 250 over the nose is an issue. Like,
No, I'm just presenting the numbers.
Especially like on something chill cast, like the K stuff that we're doing, we're probably I'm running over 300 over the nose.
And what's the lift?
Our lifts are up to 660, 16.76. Yeah,
Man,
I'd put
that's
more in
awesome.
there if I could get away with it.
Right.
I like literally on the K stuff. I'm designing with a shoehorn. Like, get a little bit more lift here, adjust the rock arm. And one thing that you mentioned earlier about is like, when do I need to go to like different rock arms? Well, other than the weight, the single roller rocker arm, that actually gives you more lift because now the roller can sit in between the valve springs and it doesn't need to steal real estate away from the retainer.
Well, and that's kind of what I was hoping that I hoping my question would spawn into um, a recipe of OEM lift, OEM rocker arm. Think about this Revlimit and valve spring combination, and just try to come out of this with recipes that someone says, "Hey, man, I have a K20. Um, you know, what do I need?" And you say, "Keep it under this RPM. Use these springs. Use these cams. You'll be fine." Oh, you want more? Then you have to do these steps. Oh, you want more? And like that moving to that um, single roller rocker arm body allows you more lift because it slides between the valve train. I didn't know that until just now.
Right. You would never even need to consider that unless you're going these monster lifts.
Yeah,
What did I say? 16.75.
yeah.
I'd lift it 1 inch if I could.
Oh, sure. I
You know?
I get it.
But shit starts looking really crazy once you start pushing it. Like for me, it's like the numbers tell me whether or not I can get there. Right. So
Right.
I can tell you for a fact I can't get to 1 inch. I can't get to 800. Can't even get to 750.
Well, it's a good thing you got two valves.
Yeah. Well, we still want to open them as much as possible.
Yeah.
So it's like the lift thing is highly understood. People are afraid of big lift, but when the valve is lifting, it's in a stroke where there's nothing going on in the hole.
Right.
So it's like my biggest concern is like on a turbo thing is if you open the exhaust cam too early, you're opening against pressure and you can break shit that way. Like forced induction cars, blown cars all have that issue. Everybody tries the advanced intake cam or the exhaust cam to get it to blow down quicker. But if you open it too quick, you're actually opening it into peak pressure, and it often bends everything.
There's a fair share. The majority of failed cams in the JZ world, the steel cam, it's almost always on the exhaust.
It's a heat
It
thing, probably.
Well, it's also away from the oil because the oil comes in the head over here. Exhaust valves are over there. So how much of it is lubrication
Yeah,
in the same breath?
probably a lot of it.
Yeah,
Surprised people haven't done more to solve it.
I tried a few years ago, and it just was. Everyone's ready when they're ready.
Are the cams hollow?
Yeah,
Oh, they are. So like
yeah,
you could easily do that. We could easily do the thing where you just drill on the base circle right before the lobe comes up.
sure, worked. It worked. It worked back in the 40s.
Right. No, and like we had a Kawasaki engine that I talked about last time. We put it together and had holes, in the lobes.
Yeah, that or spray bar in the valve cover. Some of the I think we talked about it last time too. The spray bars are available. Just do a set of billet valve covers that had a spray bar integrated into them, where you just put a fitting on top of the valve cover, and the spray bar was done inside the valve cover.
All right.
But yeah, you could just drill holes in the lobes. The motorcycle community did that for a long time.
Like you have to reference, especially naturally aspirated. If you're not referencing motorcycle stuff, you're not really into that naturally aspirated.
Yeah,
This is sort of like the new V4 Panigale engine is like a badass.
I know. I heard one yesterday, and I've ridden that. I've ridden the motorcycle before. I know how the engine performs. It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing engine.
Yeah, it's funny because that engine's up to like 250 horsepower per liter out of the box, right? 230, 250 horsepower per liter. And then if you were to reverse out the size of the valves, and the throttle body, and then made it proportional to a 2.7 liter displacement instead of a 1.1 liter displacement, you end up with like 52 millimeter valves and an 82 like a throttle body.
Right, but isn't that a fun thought? Because when you face design and you look at that the pinnacle of an aspirated realm and you say like, well, how does it math out? Well, that's how it maths out. Then you got some guy that says like, I don't want too big of a throttle body. It's like, buddy, you can't have you're never going to get too big of a throttle body.
Well, if you can figure out how to get 52 valves and a 90 bore, I'm working for you.
Well, no, because the bore is the ultimate thing. So you only know you know exactly where you can end up because with your bore you can fit this amount of intake valve, and that kind of caps the whole show.
That's the game. It's the bore.
Yeah.
The bore is a limiting factor for the valve.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you really sort of understand these really basic concepts. Like last time in the show, you said, yeah, you put in the biggest valve that you can, right? And if I was to add George Bryce to that statement, then you'd throw as much lift as you can on that valve.
Yeah.
And then you would adjust the durations accordingly to find the power.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's what it is.
If you did Honda stuff, you'd probably build better stuff than most of the knuckleheads out there.
Maybe. There's good guys in every community.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Send them my way if you meet them in Honda world.
Yeah, I will.
On that note, we're suckers for being in the car industry. Have a good Tuesday. I don't know if they eat tacos in Florida, but they do here. So happy Taco Tuesday.
All right. Have a good day.
Okay. See you later, Jay.
Yeah.
Everybody's chasing leaks in their engine. You know, like we'll get somebody call up, oh, your throttle body leaks, and it's like a pinhole in a balloon. It like barely leaks or whatever, and they're thinking it's going to have this huge impact. The biggest leak in your engine is the camshaft.